Hello, everybody, and welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast with me, James Dickson. Wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you tune into today's podcast from. Now, I'm going to have to be very, very careful with today's podcast intro because regular viewers and regular listeners to the podcast will know that we've recently introduced you all to our new headline sponsor, Present Communications. And there's a very, very lovely little bit of spiel that I do at the beginning of the podcast, and it's more important than ever today that I get that absolutely bang on. Present provides broadcast quality live, hybrid, and virtual event production, trusted by organizations where reliability really matters. From corporate town halls and conferences to high-profile live streams, they design and deliver fully resilient systems that work first time. To tell us more about Present Communications and to thank them personally for coming on board as our headline sponsor of the podcast this year, I'm delighted to welcome their managing director, Kieran Garlic, to the podcast. Kieran, a very good afternoon to you.
Hi, James. How are you?
Very well, thank you very much indeed.
Good. It sounds so strange having you read that out. It's like about me before I've come to know. It's weird.
I know, and I didn't in no way, shape, or form did I want to make you feel uncomfortable. But you know, a deal is a deal. You know, a deal is a deal. So regardless of the guest, that's what we say at the beginning, and that's what we say at the end. So I've been out there. But no, genuinely, all joking aside, it's great to have a sponsor on board. It gives us scope to explore different guests, maybe to be able to actually take the podcast out on the road, which is how it all started years ago. But we've got so used to sort of doing these things via the video platforms that we have available to us now, which are great because the quality is great. I can set up at my piano in the living room at home with a microphone and internet connection and do these podcasts. But having you guys on board as a sponsor does mean that we can maybe look to take the podcast back out on the road and do some things in person, which from a content point of view is great for Event Industry News. So it's great to have you on board, and thanks for being here. And of course, that's very much doing what we're doing now is bread and butter for you guys. For our podcast followers who might not have come across you as a company before, tell us what you do.
So Present's been going for a while, 18 years, and ultimately we're an AV company. But for 18 years, we've specialized in what's now called hybrid and virtual events. And so we're a small business based in London, but very much focused on, video and, live streaming and all of that kind of stuff. So historically, we would have worked for a lot of production companies and AV companies. I mean, COVID has changed the world, but yeah, that's us basically.
Yeah, and it's I find that the lines are blurred in a really positive way over the last few years when it comes to content. I was having this discussion actually on or just before a podcast that I've done earlier today with the guest, and just off air I was saying that if you and I were sat at a live event right now on a stage with a couple of handheld microphones in our hand, chatting to an audience and having this exact same conversation, it might be billed as something like a fireside chat, or or it would be billed as part of the conference program. We do it via this method. We pre-record it and then we put it on a platform somewhere. It's a podcast. But really what we call things now is such a gray area, isn't it? Recording content and capturing content encompasses all manner of things nowadays.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I was having that exact conversation with somebody last week as well. Very much focused on, how do you make the most out of your events? And that was partly why we started doing this. We've always done kind of corporate. We very much come from the kind of corporate world, and we've been working on corporate events for 20 years. And like you said, you have a panel discussion of 4 people, and clients will say to us, how do we make more of this? And I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to get 500 people in a room or whatever. You can have 100 people in the room and then make a podcast, and then what are you doing, with those key points? Are you snipping that up into 30-second bits of content and, that are really important and getting them out to the relevant people or whatever? And I think you're right. We get stuck sometimes in this is a live event and this is a panel discussion and this is a podcast. And actually there is so much, similarity, and there's so much more that I think people can do, but I think we're getting there. I think if you looked before COVID, if somebody said podcast, you would have gone to a podcast company, or even a video link, what we used to call video links or video conference. It used to be called video conferencing. Now basically call it a Zoom or Teams call.
Yeah.
But before COVID, if somebody said to an AV company, video conferencing, you go to a video conferencing company and get it all, and and hire in that expertise there. And I think that's completely changed now. Your AV company is doing your video production, and they're doing your video conferencing, and they're doing your live streaming, and they can build your podcast studio, whatever it is. So from that point of view, things have changed. And I think clients will catch up and they'll and realize that it's actually not very difficult or expensive to have your event or your meeting or whatever, and create content from it, and do lots of just leverage what you're already doing.
Yeah, well, leverage is a great word, and again, going back to the, what is a podcast? What is a conference program? If you record all your sessions and then put them out, on subsequent weeks, you've got a conference with an audience for the day, but then you've got 8 podcast episodes that you can put out there to promote your business or your organization or your event, whatever it is that you're doing. And I think we've just about got over this worry that we had 10, 12 years ago. I remember in the earliest days of doing this podcast, talking to people about live streaming their event. Oh, maybe you could bring in one of these companies to set up a camera and live stream. And everyone
was what we did. We came in and did that for everybody. So
and everyone went, if we live stream it, nobody will come. Nobody will come to our event. And I think we've dispelled that myth, haven't we?
Well, so the research showed that actually by live streaming your events, more people would come to your event further down the line. So it was easier to sell a ticket for an event if it had been live streamed previously, because people could look at it and go, oh, I quite like that. I'd like to go. Because everybody knows being able to watch something online is great, right? It opens up to a whole other audience, different country, people in different geographies. It's more accessible to people who perhaps can't make it to your event. But it doesn't replace a live event, right? No one's going, oh, I'm going to sit at home and watch that. It'll be more fun, right? But by opening it up, you give people both options. And like I said, the research shows actually more people will go to the event if they've been able to see it online.
Well, the point that I always presented to people who I was having that discussion with was football doesn't seem to have had a problem.
Yeah.
It's been on TV. I watch football on TV. But if there's a chance to go to a match, I will absolutely I love that. I love the feel that you get of walking towards the stadium on a match day with the fans, whether it be home and away, the pint in the pub beforehand, or the fish and chips, or whatever you have before. When you get into the stadium and that atmosphere and the raw, cold, sunny, rainy, windy, it doesn't matter. That experience is completely and utterly something you cannot replicate sat on your sofa at home watching it on the big screen. And granted, what we can watch at home is its own thing now, and the quality of the broadcast is so great, but it doesn't replicate the feeling of being in the stadium. And I would say that to people when they were discussing their events. It will never and can never replicate that feeling that somebody's going to get by walking through the door.
But some people can't walk through the door, or because, like I said, because they're a million miles away or whatever it is. So, and also, it makes sense. When you organise an event, there's so much work and money and effort that goes into organizing an event. Why wouldn't you do everything in your power to fully kind of make, to leverage that, use that word again, to make the most of, you've worked really hard to get this keynote speaker on the stage or whatever it is, or, your audience is like top notch. You've got all the people you want in one room. Why wouldn't you do everything you can to make the most of that? And that's why we do things like build podcast studios in events, because why not? Like, you maybe there's like 3 guests that you've really been trying hard to get on your like in-person studio podcast, whatever, and you can't get them. Everyone's just too busy. Well, you're now in a room together. Like, why wouldn't you do it? So it's about identifying those moments. Actually, talking of moments, not to change the subject, but we were talking to some clients about TikTok shops.
Yep.
And it's the same thing. Like, they want to live stream. They want to create a TikTok shop, live stream it. And we're saying, well, actually, do you already have an event, or what they're calling shoppable moments? In TikTok, they're called shoppable moments. Do you already have something that you can live stream? Why aren't you making the most of that first and then worry about creating something new?
I noticed, you are present communications. in the business name, there's no reference to kind of AV or media or we do filming or we do live streaming, .com. And going back to what I was saying about the sort of the gray area between what we call one thing and what we call another now, that's it seems to me that that's exactly kind of where you sit in terms of service provider. I don't mean by a gray area. I mean that you are set up to help people communicate. That could be by helping them to live stream. It could be by recording the content for use post-event. It could be for creating pre-event content, pre-recording content that then is deployed in a live environment. All of those things are kind of ticked by what you do now, which all, falls under communications, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that was, well, you hit the nail on the head. That was why, I mean, even, like I said, 20 years ago when I came up with the name, 19 years ago, that was always the plan, Back then, if you wanted to live stream something, well, you didn't do it online. It was very rare to live stream online because hotels didn't have internet and stuff back then. And if they did, it wasn't fast enough for live streaming. So you'd have to live stream from a data center. And if you remember, we used to use ISDN lines and stuff like that.
ISDN lines, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. ISDN lines and the star phone. You'd be hiding a star phone on the lectern and all this stuff. So that's where we started. So yeah, that's where the present communications came from, because like you said, it's all about communication, and most of what we did was presentations. So
I've just had a flashback to working in a sort of bar nightclub style venue. In about 21, 22 years old.
Who's a little cute little dog? Look.
Oh yeah. I've got Bonnie sat here and Mabel.
Hello,
just
Bonnie.
to my right. The two dogs are
Bonnie
always
need their own name strap.
Feature of the podcasts here. I remember a local radio station coming to do a live OB in the venue on a Saturday night and coming in and going, we need to check if you've got an ISDN line. And I'm like, what's one of those? What on earth is an ISDN line? And I had no clue how all this stuff works, but I hadn't heard somebody reference an ISDN line until you just said it there in a long time.
BT eventually got rid of them all. They shut it down, so it's no longer a thing. You can't get them anymore.
Oh wow! I mean, pre internet or good Wi-Fi, that's what we had to use. And I guess in some respects, is there a complacency that's set in now? Do people now just think that it's going to be standard that in any venue now you're going to be able to get some sort of internet connection that will allow you to do some sort of video?
Yeah. I've really mixed kind of views on this, because you're absolutely right. There is a complacency, and people do expect internet everywhere you go. How often do you walk into a coffee shop and go, what's your Wi-Fi? You just expect it. And there is a complacency, because now people think you can live stream. And of course, when you've got an event for 1,000 people, I had an inquiry the other day for a live concert. This is going to happen in a couple of weeks. You might see it online. For a brand, and they want to do a concert on Carnaby Street, and they want it to be live stream. And I'm like, if you have 5,000 people turn up at Carnaby Street, I'm telling you, the internet is going to fall over on your 5G or whatever. We tested it once with some broadcast companies, and we were looking at football. So could you do interviews like in the car park outside a football game? Talking of football earlier. And so they would put these aerials on the back of the camera. So they got the cameras on the shoulder, and there's aerials like the broadcast guys do. And it's all fine. And the football game's on, and they're wandering around the car park, and everything's beautiful, and everything's fine, and whatever. And then the game finishes, and everybody gets their phone out of their pocket. They call their wife. They upload a picture of the pitch to Instagram. That's it. The second, within 10 seconds of the game finishing, the internet's fallen down around the stadium. And people are complacent about that kind of stuff. And there's a number of things you can do to fix it. I think we are starting to become more aware that slowly but surely, when you've got a lot of people watching a stream, and it will come full circle. We did a broadcast last week that it was 45 minutes, and they had 1 million people watch it on Twitter, on X. And in that scenario, people are less complacent,
Sure,
they paid 8% on their share price, I think, before they even started the live stream. I mean, can you imagine if that went down? Or we used to work with a fashion brand. They have 40 million people would watch their fashion show. That can't afford to go down. And so in those scenarios, people are less complacent, I think. But you're absolutely right. We do expect there to be good internet and good Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff in every coffee shop or hotel.
And we are, in some respects, fortunate in that, we live in a time that we do where I'm going to pick an example out, which I think I have referenced on the podcast before. So forgive me, regular listeners, if I've trotted this one out. But in November last year, I was sat at the front of house calling an awards ceremony that I produced. About 600 people, large venue, big stage, big production, big screens, like a local hero style awards.
Right,
And one of the winners was a soldier who was serving in Kenya at the time. He was on the short list of the three finalists for this particular category. The owner of the event and me and the soldier knew that he'd won. We were the only three people that knew that he'd won.
Right.
And we knew that because I'd been asked, could we set up a live link to him in Kenya, sat in, in uniform. If he won, his family were going to come up on stage to accept the award, and then we would have it scripted at the last minute to the bang, on he comes on the screen. Brilliant. Setup went great. We tested him during the day. Fantastic. He had a great sat Wi-Fi connection. Everything tickety-boo. I'm not joking. 3 minutes before putting him on the screen, the internet in the venue fell over. It fell over.
How ironic that it's not the internet in Kenya that fell over.
It collapsed.
The internet,
a wired internet connection in the thing collapsed, and it went down. I had a speed test window open so I could constantly monitor it, and it just went down to like 0.5 download and virtually no upload. Couldn't get anything on Wi-Fi. With 60 seconds to go, I tethered to my phone because I had a 5G connection in there. And we absolutely didn't just get it. It worked. It was rock solid. It worked. He was on the screen for 3 minutes. He spoke. He had a two-way conversation with his family in the arena, and we were able to tether. And as much as we have all this great technology available to us, you mentioned something at the very beginning now, where the stuff that you do is so much more accessible than it was 10, 15 years ago now, isn't it? Because of the capabilities of what we've got available to us, both in hardware, software, a laptop, a camera, and a simple internet connection. You can achieve so much, can't you now? So it must give you a sort of a broader spectrum of who and how you can work with.
Yeah, it does. But also expectations are quite a lot higher. I mean, we did a launch for a makeup brand who opened their first UK store a few years ago in Westfield in Hammersmith. And they wanted to do this kind of activation thing they had out in the car park or out on the road, and they were filming it, and then there'd be a live stream. There'd be this influencer. She had like millions of followers, and they were going to walk through Westfield, and they were going to walk into the store, and she was going to do some product demos with these products, which is great. If you know Westfield, you'll know that there's no phone signal in the shopping center.
I do. Yeah.
And there's no Wi-Fi, obviously, outside. And so I'm trying to explain to the client, well, there's no Wi-Fi outside, so we can't connect to the Wi-Fi, but we can connect to the 5G. But when we go inside, we're going to lose that. And it's like, I don't understand. My phone works. Like, why doesn't it work? Why can't you live stream for 4 hours in a basement? So you're right. The technology has changed, and it does give us a lot more options. And of course, there's a way around it. And we did the event, and it was very successful, and that's great. But to your point about like expectations, but I can live stream on TikTok on my phone, or a Zoom call is free. Why do you want to? Why have I got to pay you to come and do this? So expectations are higher. But you're absolutely right. We've got clients who they'll be doing like a big event, and like it's got to be 4K, and everybody's got to watch it on 4K in their phones. And they're going to be all over the world. I was working with one guy, and he was just for a laugh was testing like fun things that you could do with live streaming, and so he would like live stream to Instagram while jumping out of an aeroplane, for example. Like I wonder if that'll work. So
we need pioneers like that. Yeah, we need pioneers like that. Go and do it.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure how pioneering it is to jump out of an airplane. Yeah.
No, but I guess it proves a theory.
It makes it more fun.
It proves a theory, that again that there was a worry, and I've spoken to companies who do a similar thing to you, and you know, there was for a period of time that again I think people have got over with. Was a certain sort of snobbery when it came to the advent of better iPhones and mobile connections and people's ability to be able to do video using their own devices, where some companies were guilty of saying, oh yes, but you won't get the same quality as our, you know, all singing, all dancing camera. And they're absolutely right. You know, the quality is there, and you see that when you put it on big screens, particularly at events and stuff, and big LED walls. You know, you can really see where the quality is, but that doesn't change the fact that we're more flexible in the content that we can produce. And I'm curious to ask whether or not you sort of adopt that level of flexibility within your own organization now to sort of meet a client's demands.
Partly, you're right. There absolutely was a level of snobbery, and there is still to some extent. And you know, I have a bit of a thing for doing things the proper way. But that said, the reality is that ultimately, like when you're creating content or hosting a live event or whatever it is, what you're really trying to do is have an impact on people's lives, right? You're trying to change something, or you're trying to educate people or whatever. And if you can do that with an iPhone and a TikTok account, then so be it. A lot of these, you know, kids now, Gen Zs, you know, they've got an iPhone, they've got a CapCut subscription. They're creating some great content that people are watching. You know, and I have no issue with that whatsoever. It's horses for courses, you know. What I would say is that, you know, if you look at people like, actually, I won't say, but let's say a major mobile phone manufacturer, not the fruit, the other one, but they do a lot of events that they live stream from their phones. And I've seen concerts that they've done with some A-list celebrities and stuff, and they're all shot on their phones and they look beautiful. What they don't tell you is that there's an entire production crew, full broadcast lighting, you know, everything set up. And, you know, you can't do that on like Wi-Fi, for example. So there are internet cables that run into those phones, you know, and there's 4K or HD video outputs from those phones. So they might be using the phone. That is true. But there's not there's not a 17-year-old teenager, you know, just holding it up like that, doing the filming on behalf of that major mobile phone. There's a broadcast camera guy with a steady cam rig and a full broadcast lighting, you know, lighting designers and gaffers and everything else. So that it looks beautiful, but it can be done. It kind of defies the point of using a cheap camera if you're then going to spend the money on everything else. But
this brings me to a point of what you cannot replicate, and that is the team of people who sit behind that hardware. You will have seen enough events in real time, and I've certainly seen enough of them. When you're working with a good team of technical operators and producers and people calling the shots behind, when that all works seamlessly and you have these lovely transitions from VT back to live presenter at an awards event into lighting and sound as the winner makes their way up onto stage, you can't replicate those transitions unless you've got really, really good people behind it. And that's to me what's always been mission critical, is you've got those good operators make it worthwhile.
You're absolutely right. And what I find quite interesting is that you're only really going to find out who the excellent people are when there are mistakes or when there are problems. So it's when your internet falls over or the screen dies or whatever it is, or your presenter doesn't turn up or he's not at the stage on time. Is when those things happen, when you find out who were the really good operators and who were the not so good ones. But yeah, that's and you can only find that out, right, just by finding out. So we try and build kind of a lot of resilience and stuff into our systems. But even so, you're right, it's a good team that really make the difference.
And I guess is a lot of your work now, you know, when it comes to particularly live events, is it not just delivering sort of the video and the streaming and the filming sort of production side of things, but, you know, are you involved in the sort of the wider AV aspects of events now because you can integrate it all together seamlessly with one team?
Well, that was always our kind of USP. You know, back in the day, 20 years ago, there were only a couple of streaming companies. But I think we were really the only one who could do all the AV, you know, so we've got a warehouse here in Wimbledon with, you know, speakers and microphones and whatever. And for something like I'm going to say podcast now, but like you said, 15 years ago, we'd say panel discussion. You know, and so we do all of that. and it's a really useful one-stop shop. And the other thing is, because we do a bit of everything, if you like, it makes it really easy for clients sometimes to phone us and say, we've got this thing and we're thinking we might do it this way, but we're not really sure, and this is what we're trying to achieve, and have you got any ideas? So that's quite handy, because it gives us a bit of flexibility then.
Yeah. Well, you can't replicate or fake experience. If you've been doing something for 20 years, you've got the catalogue of work to reference, and to be able to say, look, here's what we did for somebody, here's what we did for somebody else, here's what we did for somebody else. Do any of these solutions work for you? If not, we could also come up with something a little bit different. You can't replicate that.
Also, like, if you're going to do this kind of event, this is one we did before, and this is something that worked really well, or I've seen this client do it this way, and that worked really well, and they wanted to achieve XYZ the same as you, and so yeah, you're absolutely right. I've been doing this a long time. And rather than think about it, to be honest.
How tricky is it to stay up to speed with developments, either in hardware, technology, styles, things like that, when you're juggling a sort of an event workload and a diary of clients? Do you have to almost put some time aside to make sure that you're kind of following trends?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, but I would go back to what we were kind of saying earlier, and that actually clients don't necessarily always want the latest whiz bang. They just want it to work, and they don't want to have to worry about it, and they don't want their clients or their the people watching their live stream or whatever to be disappointed because something's not working. And if bringing the latest whiz bang tech into your broadcast, for example, is going to make it fall over, they don't want that. And actually, especially, I mean, it's a bit different now, but before COVID, live streaming used to make people really nervous, like we were saying. And the last thing they want is to have this new technology that no one's used before. So yes, we do stay up to date with stuff, but actually, I don't think it's always about using the latest and greatest thing. Sometimes we have clients saying to us, "Oh, I've got to stream in 4K." It's like, well, why have you got to stream in 4K? Well, because that's the latest thing. Okay, but people are watching on their phone and it's that big, right? So how does that work? Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't need to be 4K. For example, I mean, things like, even like, let's take like TikTok Shop again. That's a relatively new thing. It's certainly something that TikTok are pushing more recently. But the technology behind it isn't new. The streaming into it, the technology works the same way that we've been doing it for 10, 15 years. Yeah, like, it's faster and the quality is better and all that kind of stuff, but the actual workflow is the same. So I don't think we need to necessarily get caught up all the time with having the latest and greatest stuff. It's often about how you use things. You can be creative and in more ways than just using the latest technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's the little things that I spot. And I've just remembered something that I saw. I mean, for context, we're recording this on a Monday. As so often I've recorded the podcast over the years, it tends to be on a Monday that I find myself, sitting here talking to people. And I remember over the weekend watching something on TV, on Amazon. And anybody who watches Amazon knows now that unless you sort of pay for their next level up, you'll occasionally get adverts popping up in the middle of things now. And for the first time over the weekend, I noticed that in line with the advert that popped up on screen for whatever the home appliance was, there was a link. There was a link to it on the screen that says, "Add to my Amazon shopping basket," with the price. And so I could have pushed the OK button on my TV remote and it would have added it to the Amazon shopping basket on the Amazon app on my phone. And I thought, what a simple thing to do. What is a TV now and what is a smartphone? They've all got an operating system. They've all got a display. They've all got a means of interacting with the screen.
Well, it's in some respects. Old second screen thing. I don't know if you remember the second screen trend years ago. It never really took off. But this is it, right? This is it coming to fruition. And this is, like I was saying, the brand that we're working with in a few weeks on this big launch thing, and the TikTok Shop, same thing. They've got this launch event. And it's that thing about shoppable moments. Like, why aren't we doing that and creating more content from that? And so that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing their launch event for their VIPs and whatever in the room, and then you'll see a TikTok shop come up, and then the links will come up. And not only will the links to the products that they're launching at the event come up on your phone, but you can buy them there and then.
Yeah.
You know, it makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense. And when I saw this pop up on the screen over the weekend, I'm just like, mind blown. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so simple. Of course the technology exists there. My Amazon account on TV is linked to my Amazon shopping account on the app. You know, why wouldn't it be so easy to bang an advert in there, a link there to buy that product? And I just thought, could you imagine if you'd have presented this to someone like ITV or Channel 4 30 years ago? You know,
well, they did. I remember this, maybe not 30 years ago, but there was things, I think it was Friends or something. Obviously, it never happened. The technology didn't exist, but they were talking about could like Monica walk on the TV for the youngsters? They probably don't know what I'm talking about. But could she walk onto screen and could you go, oh, I like that blouse, and click on it and buy it? So that was an idea that came out a long time ago, but the technology is just not there wasn't there to do it. I mean, you could probably do that now, but like you said, it makes just as much sense for it to pop up on your phone. Makes perfect sense, really. They've really got you sewn up, haven't they? The other thing is, I read something the other day. Something like 30% of online purchases are impulse buys.
Yeah.
So if you can just get something in front of somebody at the right time, they go, oh, I like that. They're quite likely to buy it, and quite a lot of people will spend money that way.
Absolutely. I picked up a new pair of trainers yesterday from Vinted that were purchased after 7 pints of Guinness on St. Patrick's Day last week. So
perfect.
I can attest to the impulse.
I bought trainers last week. I was on a job in New York. We're doing a live stream in New York, and the hotel was really cool, and they had their own branded trainers. I had to buy them.
I mean, there we go. You know, forget your branded notepad and a pen. That's well done to the hotel, I say. You know, new merchandising ideas. For the teenagers amongst you who may remember the film Spaceballs, Mel Brooks did say merchandising where the real money is. For any film buffs out there. It's been great chatting to you today, and I feel that this was what I call an unplanned podcast. Everybody, you know, usually when the guests come on, there's a story or something behind it, you know, which is why they've got in touch, which is great, you know, and we've generally got some talking points. And I said to Kieran off air before we sort of hit record on today's episode, look, you know, great. We want to say thank you for supporting the podcast and all the rest of it. Let's just have a chat about what you do. And
we had no talking points today.
So often they're the best conversations because you think, I could talk to this person for ages, and maybe we should extend this a little bit further. So why don't we do that? Here's an open invite. Come back on with no planning, no prep, and just have a chat. Throw anything out there. Let's have a chat and keep this conversation going. Maybe
I'll come up with a funny story for next time. Something comical.
That'd be amazing. And we need to get some sort of definite sort of feature or ident, you know, done for full dog credit going forward. I often reference my dogs when I'm recording from home, and generally they're no trouble at all, which is why. But look, just as I speak, one of them wanders straight into shot. No, it's been great speaking to Kieran, and genuine on behalf of the podcast followers and me, who's had the privilege of sort of sitting behind the mic now for over 10 years and hosting this podcast. It is great to have some support there, and knowing then that it gives us a bit of flexibility and scope maybe to sort of do a few more adventurous things with it this year is a really great position to be in. So thanks on behalf of the Event Industry News podcast followers and the team here to Present Communications for coming on board and being the podcast sponsor. I'll leave my sort of final spiel wrap up right to the very end. What I will say very quickly, in line with some sort of thanks and things like that, is that we're just looking at the stats this morning from last month, and there were over 120,000 visitors to the eventindustrynews.com website in February. The stats are fantastic. So we just wanted to say thank you to all of the people who use eventindustrynews.com on a regular basis, who visit the website, who read the news that goes up there, who access and utilize the supplements and the special features that the team work really hard to put together. Simple things like the A to Z supplier directory. You know, if you work in the industry, you're looking for a product, service, or a supplier, you know, the A to Z supplier directory is a fundamental part of the Event Industry News website. Always has been, always will be. And if you want to sort of find something in the industry that you're looking for, chances are you'll find it on there. And at the moment, the figures suggest that that's exactly what you're doing. Over 120,000 of you visiting the Event Industry News website in February. So a big thanks to you all. If you've started your journey today by watching today's podcast on the website, thank you very much for doing so. Have a little look at all that other stuff on the website that I've just mentioned. And do go over to wherever you get your audio podcasts from and make sure that you are liked and subscribed, regardless of the platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. If you've started your journey there by listening to us, do make sure you go in the other direction over to the eventindustrynews.com website to check out the video versions and all of that other stuff that I've mentioned. So it brings me to the end of today's episode, and it just gives me time to say thank you to my guest today, Kieran Garlic from Present Communications. Present provides... a pleasure. I'm going to launch into it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable one last time today. As I say, Present provides broadcast quality live, hybrid, and virtual event production trusted by organizations where reliability really matters. From corporate town halls and conferences to high-profile live streams, they design and deliver fully resilient systems that work first time. Kieran, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
Absolutely. We'll see you all on the next edition of the podcast, everybody. Take care. Goodbye.